Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for letting me present my research. I'm very excited to present my research project, Competition for Water Resources, Experiences from Rural Households in Sub-Saharan Africa. I had the opportunity to work in this project with my PhD advisor, Dr. Melo Rodriguez, and other three amazing colleagues from the Department of Political Science and the Global Water Institute at Ohio State. I would like to acknowledge that this is a very tiny piece of the Government Research and Water Systems Program GROWS. This program was possible by the generous support of the American people through the Agency for International Development, and also based on the amazing partnerships we did and the support we got from the governments of Kenya, Tanzania, and Uganda.
It's their turn.
And I know it has been a very busy couple of days, and some of you stayed late last night at the student social or individually, and you haven't had enough time to do everything you do in a normal routine. So I will give you 10 seconds right now. So you're gonna stand up and we're gonna do some exercise. Okay. When I say go, you can do any exercise in the space you have. Go. 3, 2, 1. Please take your seat. I hope that woke you up and you feel much better. So now I want you to use your imagination and think that this was not 10 seconds. It was 1 hour or 2 hours of a workout session. What is going to be the first thing you're going to look for after a long workout session? Water. You were about to. What happens if the only water that I have available for you to drink is this one? Will you drink it? Perhaps this is not the situation for the majority of us, or maybe all of us, but this is the situation that GROWS has been trying to address and approach and design innovative governance models and tools that are going to help accelerate the reduction of extreme poverty in Sub-Saharan Africa. When we think about competition for water resources, usually in the water distribution systems in rural communities, the distribution patterns do not respond to the needs that the families have. Some of these communities are still challenging a lot of competition with other households in the same community, but also among the economic sectors that are traditional in the communities. Yes. So competition for water resources has created a lot of conflict in the political, economic, and cultural environments in Africa. The continent already deals with a historical unfair distribution of resources within the countries in the same region, but also geographically located in disadvantage with other regions of the world. Sub-Saharan Africa specifically is the region with the highest level of water scarcity for all necessary uses at the household level. 42% of the households do not receive enough water for domestic and hygiene uses, and water scarcity is the leading cause of food losses in the agricultural production at the household level. So this study is aiming to explore the competition for water among rural communities in Sub-Saharan Africa. So for this study, we propose 3 research questions that helped us guiding this study. So the first one is about how the rural households experience the competition for the water resources. The second one is looking at how the decisions about the water resources uses are made in the household level. And the last one is how the competition for those water resources is impacting the communities. Like I say, this is a very big research project. It was conducted over 2 years collecting data with a pandemic in the middle. So it has been a very interesting research project that has been going on in 5 research sites in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. Each research site is a particular water distribution system with a very unique governance model. 50 face-to-face interviews and 14 focus groups were conducted. In those, representatives from central and local government, academia, international and national nonprofit organizations, Civil society organizations participated specifically in the interviews, and members of the water committees, community leaders, and users participated in the focus group discussions. So the first question was looking about the competition for water resources. According to the participants, the competition for water resources is increasing constantly. And some of the reasons that emerge as a reason for increasing in the competition is changes in the climate, more users in the same distribution system, and failures in the water supply systems to address and cover all the needs they have. In rural water distribution, a constant increase in demand without expanding or updating the systems is generating a lack not only, or a decrease not only in the quantity and intensity, but also in the quality. Most of these systems are not only for distribution, but are also in charge of the treatment that the water is receiving. One of the participants mentioned it, the system is not enough to supply all the water that is required in town. According to the users, some of the productive sectors, including agriculture and services, and this was a very interesting part because the leading sector in some rural areas are garbage. And they are the main one, or the main productive or service sector that is creating competition for those water resources. Creates scarcity issues for domestic and hygiene water needs. Some households that are close to the water distribution systems are taking advantage of their position, using more water for those economic purposes, putting the households that are far from the system in disadvantage, receiving less quality and less quantity of water. Second, we talk about the decision making that families are making about the water resources. And we see power dynamics in decision making process, and this has multiple levels. First one, community leaders are making the decisions about schedules and also how much water a specific household or area will be receiving. And we see that some of these leaders are not taking into the consideration all the necessities that the community have. And in the other level, we have the power dynamic within the household level. Because we see men still taking the decisions about how the water will be used and how it will be distributed among the productive and the domestic uses. Users believe that hygiene and domestic uses should be the first to be satisfied. One of the participants mentioned it. First, we prioritize the house, and then we use the water for other purposes. Others consider that agricultural and productive water demands have greater urgency because these sectors promote economic development and potential improvement of the water distribution systems. Gross has been trying to address water governance from four perspectives, or from including four elements that are trust, transparency, accountability, and equity. Most of the water systems we include in the study have a lot of issues with trust and accountability within the communities, and that is making some of the resources that the water system are creating and producing based on the distribution are not getting reimbursed. So even though some of these economic sectors can potentially develop or promote economic development, unfortunately there is lack of accountability on how that is happening right now. One of the participants mentioned it, sometimes the water is not enough for our house, and even then we have to allocate a part to irrigate for crops. So in the impacts of the community based on this distribution, we already talked a little bit about how the competition for water is disrupting the dynamics within the community, creating conflict among the community members because they start competing not only for the water but also disrespecting the rules that regulate the water system. At the community level, competing water demands have consequences for the distribution system, users, and the resources themselves. Competition for water compromises the efficiency of water distribution systems, promoting water waste and also improper use of the system. One of the participants mentioned that due to the high competition for water, users do not respect distribution schedules and they use more water than they should. Another implication is for this competition is the struggle that community leaders are having to implement governance tools and models that will help improve that distribution. There is a lack of trust, but also there is a lot of user dissatisfaction on the services they are receiving. So that is preventing leaders to implement effective governance models and tools. At the individual level, households are forced to seek alternative sources of water, which in many cases impacts directly their economy. Some of these resources are very expensive, and we need to consider the context of this project and consider that an impact in the household economy, it doesn't matter how much it is, it's gonna go directly to the economy, impacting other areas that are connected with the human well-being. So at home, the lack of water will force coping measures that compromises human well-being and health. So some of the conclusions and recommendations for this study: in Sub-Saharan Africa, competition for water is constantly increasing due to the population growth, climatic changes, and the acceleration deterioration of natural resources. We should be doing and working through water governance to solve all of these, or ready to find solutions to these. And one of those is understanding the competition for these resources, so we can manage and provide a governance scheme that address that. This qualitative study shows competing demands for household use and productive sectors within the same communities in Uganda, Kenya, and Tanzania. And the results are relevant to inform water distribution systems and professionals about water distributions, service segmentation, water conservation, and community participation and engagement. Distribution schemes that promote an equitable distribution between uses in household and rural communities should be explored more and should also be evaluated to identify what are the approaches they are using to be more effective and inclusive. We propose that further research on the effects of competition for water on household members' well-being, education, and health is recommended. Historically, women and girls are the ones in charge of collecting water when there is not enough water, and this has direct impact on the academic level they achieve, but also in their health. You will find a lot of research on the impact that carrying water has on health, especially for women, because they need to carry water for long distances. The results of this study will be used by those responsible for the governance of community service delivery systems to plan, implement, evaluate actions to increase efficiency and inclusiveness of water distribution. Those are my references, and I will take any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Questions? Yes.
Great presentation. Wondering if you looked at any specific differences in households, like whether they were upstream or downstream in water resource use? Oh, sorry. Wondering if there was any differences in like households or users that were upstream on a river versus downstream?
So we had participants in the 14 focus groups that were allocated or were distributed towards the whole systems. We haven't made any difference, or we didn't differentiate them where they were. In this type of studies, the context limits a lot the participation of people when you invite them. So we, in each research site, we conducted at least 2 focus groups for each research site. And we have participants in from every part of the water system. We didn't differentiate, but we got from leaders and the users and the ones, especially from the leaders who are the one managing the system. They recognize that the people that are close to the system are going to be the ones getting more water and best quality of water, because it's not only about the frequency of use and how close they are. It's also about the malfunction of the system. So as far as they get, the system is not functioning correctly, and so they not only get less water but also with very poor quality. Any failure in the system will decrease the water, especially for the ones that are far from the center point where they treat and manage the water distribution.
Right. So these are deep earth wells. So they are not rivers. We're talking about constructed water schemes. Yep.
Yes. So I just want to point that these are formal structures. That this is not sources that are not treated or anything. These are projects that have been donated and now are managed by community, or they have different scheme management, a public and private alliance. managing the system. So,
Bore wells, yeah.
yes.
Okay, I hope this isn't too awkward, but I want to talk a little about economics. So, if I was to couch your study from my impression, it's on the demand side of the economic equation, which is important to manage, how demand is used. Do you know anything from the supply side? In other words, landscape level drivers or infrastructure or technology that can actually improve the supply of water, because that's another way to meet needs.
So the project has been, we approach this project using, or from multiple elements within governance, and one of those, of course, is the economic part. We talk a little bit about revenue collection and all of those tools that are gonna help, especially with accountability. We talk about meters that will calculate how much water each household is using. We tablets to collect the payment, cards that they can use to pay for the water, or a specific card that a household will get. E-payment, e-water payment was one of the technology that emerged as a part of the economic efforts to make the system more efficient, but also more accountable. In terms of like the service provision, each system has a very unique management system in place. Some of them are operated by a nonprofit organization. Some of the systems have a partnership between the water board at the local level, but also a nonprofit organization providing support. Some of them were provided support by the nonprofit organization and were designed and implemented, and then the nonprofit organization left, and then was give it to the community. So there are pieces about the economic part, specifically about how we can make these systems more efficient and more accountable, because there is especially when revenue is collected by a human, there is a lot of lack of accountability, and we cannot track if the resources are really going back and being invested in the system.
So, and Adam, in response to the question about like the natural resources and stuff like that, different systems have different meters to read the hydrology levels. So a lot of the boreholes, in development work don't have always the best research to determine the wealth of water in the borehole that they're drilling and the system that they're drilling to. So we didn't have information on whether we did know that some were going like dry, that kind of thing, but we can't speak to the hydrological levels of the sites that we studied.
But 14 communities, 3 countries, right?
5 research sites, and those research sites cover different communities.
Yeah.
But 3 different countries.
Yeah, 14 communities in all.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, my question was regarding Tanzania. I know you can't address everything in the presentation, but I'm sure as you know, Tanzania historically a very different approach. A quasi form of socialism. Very different. So, do you tease out anything different about the Tanzania focus groups as opposed to Kenya and Uganda?
Well, when we actually, this is a study trying to present a comprehensive view of the 2 countries. We have an individual profile, and you will notice that in management there are differences. Tanzania historically had more presence of private sector providing water, and communities giving these private operators the whole system and letting them. And some of them have been effective, but also there is a lot of results, and they have a lot of information for urban areas on how water distributions are effective. There is less information about how rural distribution services are being effective or not. But I think one of the highlights and the difference we found between the countries is that Tanzania is the leading one in terms of private operators having the right to operate the water distribution systems. They involve the community in some extent, but at the end the decisions are made by external partners and external stakeholders that are managing the system.
Well, that's interesting, because that would be somewhat counterintuitive to the long experience they had with the socialism model. A quick question, if you have one, Dr. Burrows? No, go ahead.
Oh, no.
Was there money allocated, or were there resources allocated to train operators, not the economic management, but operators, repair, provision,
Maintenance.
maintenance.
So that is one of the elements. The end goal of this project is going to be a toolkit that is going to be available in the USAID website, and it's going to be available for other service delivery providers that are interested in governance. And one of the elements is training. We did a study with Dr. Rodriguez about those training strategies that these water governance models are using within the, for their users in terms of use, but also for their technical personnel. One of the main reasons why these systems are failing is because they don't have the technical capacity to repair.
Absolutely.
And we have seen that, we have, there are some of the systems that got help from Germany or the United States. Once the partner institution left the system and is given to the community, that's when the system starts decreasing in terms of quality and inclusiveness of the service, because they don't have the technical capacity to repair and maintain, and we don't even start talking about expand the system. So we are proposing a lot of educational efforts, not only for the users, because it's important to educate the users and inform and make information available for them, but a lot of emphasis on the technical capacity that the systems have to repair and be sustainable balance.
One of your slides said a gift from the American people or something like this. It says, by the generous support of the American people. Wonder who decided it was generous support? I bet
You can talk to USAID